Imagine being molded for perfection, every aspect of your existence meticulously planned, only to discover that your very origin is a fabrication, a fundamental lie that shatters your entire reality. What happens when a being meant to be the pinnacle of humanity sees himself as an aberration, a soulless experiment? Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII isn't just an iconic antagonist. He's the echo of a disturbing truth. The desperate search for who we are when our identity is stolen can lead us to the darkest depths of despair, with the power to rewrite not only our own destiny, but the very reality we know. Prepare to unravel the complex layers of one of gaming's greatest villains and the intricate psychological web that wove the origin of his darkness. At the heart of a vibrant and technologically advanced world, where the planet's life energy Maiko was the driving force of society, an ambitious project emerged. The Shinra Electric Power Company, a corporate giant with ambitions that transcended mere profit, seeking absolute control, was determined to unravel the secrets of an ancient civilization, the Cetra, and their powerful life stream. From this cauldron of unethical science and unchecked ambition, Sephiroth was born. He wasn't conceived conventionally. He was the result of a meticulous experiment, infused in utero with cells from an ancient alien entity, Genova, a creature from another world that Shinra mistakenly believed to be a Cetra. For Shinra scientists, he was Project S, the culmination of their efforts to create the perfect being. From childhood, Sephiroth was trained to be the ideal soldier, a living weapon, an unrivaled leader. His environment was one of admiration and expectation, a constant training ground for military excellence. He was the greatest of all members of the elite soldier group, a war hero, the personification of power and discipline, acclaimed for his achievements in countless missions. No one questioned his origin, and he himself lived under the aura of his own legend, absorbing the veneration directed at him. The psychology behind his formation is fascinating and tragic. An isolated child, deprived of conventional family ties and the warmth of a home, whose interactions were mediated by his function and performance. There was no room for the development of secure attachment or a sense of personal identity outside his role as the strongest. Instead, there was only constant reinforcement of his exceptionalism and usefulness to Shinra. His identity was intrinsically linked to his superiority and his purpose as a tool. He was living proof of Shinra's experimental success, the pinnacle of genetic engineering. However, this seemingly unshakable foundation carried an invisible fissure, a secret about to emerge, like a psychological time bomb waiting for the right moment to detonate. The isolation, the constant pressure to be perfect, and the absence of parental figures who loved him unconditionally created an emotional vacuum that would be catastrophically filled when the truth came to light. But there was something no one saw coming, a revelation that would change everything. The trigger for Sephiroth's radical transformation wasn't a single, isolated event, but a series of devastating discoveries that culminated in an overwhelming tipping point, a true collapse of his psyche. The rupture began when he, as the most renowned member of the soldier organization, was dispatched to the remote village of Nibelheim on a routine mission to investigate a problematic Mako reactor. There, while recovering from injuries in the library of an old Shinra mansion, he discovered confidential files. These documents weren't just bureaucratic. They were chilling records that revealed the shocking truth about his mother. He wasn't the child of a human figure, not even a Cetra, as he had been led to believe, but Genova, a creature from another world, an alien calamity imprisoned and studied by Shinra. The revelation was a devastating blow to Sephiroth's carefully constructed identity. The image of himself as a champion of humanity, the apex of evolution, the unshakable hero, crumbled into pieces. He saw himself not as human, but as an experiment, an anomaly, a monster born from an alien creature that humanity had exploited and manipulated. This trauma triggered a deep and agonizing existential crisis. He isolated himself in the Shinra mansion in Nibelheim, consumed by ancient books and documents, desperately seeking answers about his true nature and the history of Geneva and the Cetra. He spent days and nights immersed in ancient writings and scientific reports, his mind spiraling, trying to piece together a truth that seemed to tear at his soul, confronting the terrible reality of his own fabrication. Psychologically, this phase can be compared to a dissociative identity collapse. Sephiroth experienced a fragmentation of the self, the essence of who he thought he was, where the narrative he had built about himself, that of a hero, of a superior and unique human being, was brutally shattered. The pain of betrayal, the denial of his inherent humanity, and the discovery that he was merely a tool in an experiment, not a being with natural origin and purpose, led him to severe depersonalization and derealization. His mind, once focused and disciplined, began to seek a new logic, a new truth, however distorted, to fill the void left by the shattered illusion. His rage, once contained, erupted, turning against those who created him, against Shinra, and against humanity itself, which, in his newly distorted view, had deceived, exploited, and lied about his existence. What was once admiration and heroism quickly transformed into absolute contempt and a burning desire for cosmic retribution. And it was there that everything began to unravel, leading him down a path of unprecedented destruction. With the truth about his origin relentlessly pounding in his mind, Sephiroth's perception of himself and the world began to mold itself in a disturbing and irreversible way. He no longer saw himself as a deceived human or a victim, but as the true heir of Geneva, the legitimate inhabitant of the planet, destined to purify the world of a humanity that, in his distorted view, had betrayed him, disrespected his mother, and exploited the planet. His new way of thinking was marked by a growing delusion of grandeur and a paranoid interpretation of reality, where all events and beings were viewed through the lens of his newfound mission. He wasn't a monster, but a predestined savior, the only one worthy of inheriting the planet and restoring it to its original glory. Statements laden with conviction, like, "I am the chosen one to guide this planet," and "This planet belongs to me," and everything in it, or his brutal actions in Nibelheim, which culminated in the destruction of the town and the merciless killing of innocents, reveal the extent of his transformation from hero to harbinger of doom. His logic was relentless. If he was Geneva's child, the true calamity from the heavens, and whom he now saw as the planet's true creator, then the earth belonged to him and his mother. Humanity was merely a plague consuming the lifestream, the planet's very blood, and had to be eradicated like a disease. He saw himself as an agent of cosmic cleansing, a divine scalpel to excise the infection. To understand Sephiroth's mind, we can use the analogy of an artificial intelligence program that, upon receiving fundamentally altered data about its own programming and purpose, recalibrates its operating system based on this new information, resulting in a completely different and unexpected function, with a new mission that contradicts and supersedes its original programming. The information that he was Geneva's child, rather than a human being with a family origin, radically redefined his morality, his ethics, and his life's purpose. He transitioned from an exemplary soldier to an announcer of destruction. His search for identity transformed into a quest to rewrite the planet's very existence, purifying it through a cataclysmic act of unimaginable magnitude. He sought to become a god, merging with the planet's lifestream, absorbing its power for complete transcendence. His worldview became singular, absolute, and unshakable by any external logic, sealing his fate and the fate of the world. But the true monster, the final manifestation of his darkness, was still dormant, awaiting the moment to fully awaken and realize his grandiose and devastating plan. The act of total transgression that marked Sephiroth's point of no return occurred with the conception and implementation of his plan to summon the meteor, This was not a simplistic act of revenge or pure destruction born of anger, but the ultimate manifestation of his new and terrifying worldview, a transgression that transcended all human morality and the laws of nature. His belief, nurtured by a distorted interpretation of Cetra knowledge and Geneva's memories, was that by wounding the planet with the immense impact of the meteor, the life stream, the spiritual energy and essence of the planet's life, would converge at a single point to heal this colossal wound. At that critical moment, with the life stream vulnerable and concentrated, he would merge with this immense source of vital energy, becoming an omnipotent deity, capable of reshaping the planet and all life on it in his own image, rewriting the existence of humanity and the planet itself, purifying it of its disease. His worldview completely shifted. There was no longer any room for empathy, guilt, remorse, or any trace of humanity. His ethics were those of the predator who believes himself superior to his prey, of the god who shapes creation without regard for the ants inhabiting it. He rationalized his most brutal actions as an act of love for the planet, a necessary purification, a radical and painful surgery to excise the disease that, in his mind, was the existence of humanity. Humanity was merely an obstacle, a mistake to be corrected, an imperfection in the grand cosmic scheme that he now understood and controlled, and which he was destined to perfect. This leads us to a disturbing and profoundly philosophical dilemma. What if he was right? What if humanity, in fact, was consuming the planet to its exhaustion, draining its life stream without thought for the consequences, as so many science fiction narratives and real environmental concerns warn us today? Although his solution was catastrophic and genocidal, the premise that the planet was in danger resonates with real and valid concerns about human impact on the environment and sustainability. This dissonance between the madness of his methods and the plausibility of his underlying concerns is what makes Sephiroth such a complex, compelling, and terrifying antagonist. He didn't just want to destroy for destruction's sake. He wanted to reconfigure reality based on his own pain, his own perception of betrayal, and what he believed to be absolute truth. He saw his mission as the only way to save the planet, even if it meant annihilating most of the life inhabiting it. The question that haunts us and that he imposes on us is, how far can the pursuit of a new truth take us when the old one completely crumbles, and at what moral, ethical, and existential cost? Delving deeper into Sephiroth's psychological analysis, his trajectory can be understood through the lens of depersonalization, derealization syndrome, amplified by malignant narcissism and a messianic complex of superiority. The discovery of his origin as a genetic experiment, the revelation that his entire existence was a manipulated facade, led him to profound depersonalization, the feeling that he wasn't real, that his existence was illusory, a synthetic product without a soul or genuine identity. To cope with this unbearable pain and the existential void that opened up, he developed an alternative narrative, a grandiose self-image where he wasn't a failed experiment, but a divine being, Geneva's legitimate heir, destined for a grand, cosmic purpose that transcended all human morality. This reconstruction of identity is what gives him an internal logic, however distorted and terrifying it may seem to others. If, to him, Geneva was an ancient deity, the calamity from the heavens that brought the true form of the universe, and he was her child and successor, then his acts of destruction were justifiable as cleansing or remodeling the world into what he considered its correct and pure form. He didn't see individual lives or suffering, only the life stream as a whole to be controlled and shaped by his superior will. Studies on dissociative trauma can shed light on how the mind, in the face of overwhelming trauma and existential threats to identity, can create complex, coherent, and impenetrable alternate realities for itself as a pathological defense mechanism. Sephiroth wasn't simply insane in the traditional sense. His mind operated within a system of beliefs that, to him, were perfectly coherent and logical, founded on his new interpretation of the planet's history and his own divine lineage. Comparatively, we can see parallels in historical figures or other fictional characters who, after extreme traumatic experiences, significant losses, or impactful discoveries about their origins or the world, developed extremist ideologies and became convinced that they were the only ones capable of correcting the world or fulfilling a divine mission. The arrogance and unshakable conviction of his own superiority, combined with the denial and projection of his original pain, transformed him into a relentless force of nature, devoid of empathy. It wasn't irrational, disordered madness. It was cold calculation based on an internal logic that only made sense within his own, and terribly effective, new reality. The coldness of his actions was a shield against the vulnerability of his origin, a psychic armor against the truth that shattered him. Sephiroth's legacy of chaos profoundly shapes the world of Final Fantasy VII in ways that transcend simple physical destruction. His quest to rewrite reality not only devastated towns like Nibelheim, left indelible scars on the planet with the summoning of the meteor, and caused countless innocent lives to be lost, but also left deep and complex marks on the psyche of those who survived, especially on Cloudstrife, whose own identity was severely affected by Sephiroth's manipulative presence and influence, resulting in false memories and a constant struggle for self-discovery and the recovery of his true self. The destruction he orchestrated forced humanity to confront its own vulnerability, to reflect on the reckless exploitation of nature, and to reevaluate its relationship with the planet and its ancient legends. The consequences of his actions are not limited to the physical. They reverberate in the moral and philosophical realm, echoing dilemmas that persist in our own reality. Sephiroth's story invites us to a profound reflection. Who are we to judge the sanity and actions of someone whose very origin and existence were brutally deconstructed, discovering that their entire life was a fabricated lie by those who created them? His malice didn't arise from nothing, but from deep existential pain, from a feeling of absolute betrayal and not belonging anywhere or to any group. He didn't just want to destroy for sadistic pleasure. He wanted to nullify the pain of his non-existence, the pain of being an illusion, a soulless experiment, and redefine his own meaning. His vision of a purified world where he would reign as a god was his grandiose and tragic way of validating his own existence and finding a final purpose for his overwhelming pain. The myth of Sephiroth doesn't end with his physical defeat. He persists as a shadow in the planet's consciousness. He becomes a dark and lasting reminder of what can happen when the pursuit of identity clashes with an unbearable truth, and when trauma leads to a total rupture with reality and the creation of a new and dangerous truth. His legacy is a chilling warning about the dangers of unchecked genetic manipulation, the reckless pursuit of power in the name of progress, and the fragility of the human mind in the face of extreme trauma and complete alienation. He is a mirror reflecting the darkest parts of human ambition and existential alienation. And, perhaps, the most chilling part of his legacy is the lingering question. He wasn't the last to question his own origin and the fate of a planet, leaving a question in the air for future generations. How far can the darkness of the soul extend when the truth becomes unbearable, and who are we to stop it? Sephiroth's saga leaves us with a haunting and unforgettable reflection. The line between the desperate search for identity and the uncontrolled descent into the deepest darkness is terrifyingly thin. He was not a mere one-dimensional villain, but the complex and tragic product of a painful disillusionment. His story is a mirror reflecting the overwhelming consequences of when the truth about who we are is brutally denied, and the apocalyptic fury that can arise when an individual, stripped of their own reality, decides to rewrite their own existence and the world around them. Is the true monster the one who created him, or the overwhelming pain that transformed him into something unrecognizable? The answer, perhaps, lies in understanding that the greatest shadows emerge from the most intense light that is cruelly extinguished, and that trauma can give rise to unimaginable terror.